Morning, morning. Happy Friday. And yeah, it's just didn't have a massive sleep last night because I was sitting watching the football and sorting my new phone out, logging into all my stuff again and all of that. And yeah, I thought, right, I better go to bed now. And so I went to bed a bit later than I would normally go, and I was up crack of dawn, so yeah, about 5 hours or something, which is not ideal in some ways, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my wee, routine in the morning, and I'm going to step on over to have a sauna. A quick one more than anything, and then come back and crack on. But yeah, I've been thinking about a lot of things again this morning, as I usually do when I wake up. Because there's this thing in it where you get inspired thoughts sometimes in the mornings, and well, I think most people do, because the thing is, you kind of process on things while you're sleeping with REM, rapid eye movement, in your sleep, and you make sense of things, and then it kind of solidifies into some thoughts as you wake up, You often hear of these things where people come up with things in the morning, they just like wake up and like, oh, and they're like, that's what we need to do, or that's what I want to do, which is amazing, really, I find. But anyway, so I thought it would be helpful for perspective sometimes, because sometimes many times we can struggle with perspectives of around where we're at in life, and other things as well. But I guess around the idea of like, we might be grinding away at something, and I'm just thinking of an example where, say, I was washing dishes when I was a teenager in a local hotel kind of pub place, and when you're doing that and you're grinding through a shift cleaning dishes, it can be a bit of a difficult thing to have a vision for the future about where you're going with things or that, isn't it? It might be that you struggle to see past cleaning the dishes, or what could be next to some extent, or maybe not. But so I used to do that. I think I've got a pay slip still in my box of treasures, and I think it was something like £2. I think it was £2.30 or something. Oh, I'd have to check. I think it was about £2.30 an hour I was getting as a dishwasher, But I guess if I was to think about all the different jobs that I've had, yeah. So, and if I start from the beginning, and I might not remember some of them, but I'm just going to go with the flow. So if I think about it, the earliest memory I have of these things is helping my brother, my older brother, do his paper round. So he had a paper round, and I'd kind of go around with him, do the paper round, but he wouldn't give me any of the money for it. But I would still do it with him, and that was interesting. It was on a Saturday morning, I think it was, for a while. That was when we used to live in Lancashire. So I must have only been about, I don't know, it must have been only about 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah, it must have been like that. So, yeah, about that, 7 maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7. It's tricky to remember exact timings, but, and then the first real job I think I had, not a real job as such, but I think it was helping out on a farm, maybe. I used to these local farmers, also places where my mum used to work, and I would sometimes help them out on the farm, and they'd give me like £5 or £10 for helping out on the collecting sheep off the hills, where you'd go across the whole hills and find sheep that were in the middle of nowhere in the highlands, and you would then round them up slowly. But there'd be like a massive hill all the way over there. It was probably about 5-10 kilometers long, and then there'd be 3 sheep like 5 kilometers away up in that corner. You'd have to walk the whole thing just to collect them up, you know, for doing things like sorting their shearing and stuff like that, you know, or like bringing them in for certain things like dipping them and stuff. So I did that, and yeah, that's interesting. Get to drive some of the vehicles and stuff like that. I also helped the local farmer with a few tasks that he had. I asked him if I could, I went down and asked him if I could help him out for the summer and stuff, and he was like, yeah, but yeah, that was something else. And then I used to go and collect tin cans, so I used to walk the sides of the roads in the Highlands, and and at the times I would collect like cans, beer cans or aluminium cans, and then I'd squash them and I'd sell bags of them for like a couple of pounds or something, if that. And yeah, that's another thing I did. And then one of the things I did was, because we lived in a house that used to have lead water pipes, and we couldn't drink the water, so we ended up having this blue water pipe, plastic one, putting in. But then basically all of this lead pipe was in the ground still, and it was about, I would say, nearly like a mile away, or at least a kilometre away anyway, the water source, in a peat bog, you know, through a forest. But it would go from our house all the way across the fields, all the way up through the forest and through to the peat bog. But it was about, how far down was it? It was about it was about 1.5 meters down, something like that, in the ground, this lead water pipe. And they must have put that down there in God knows when, but that house was built, I think, in 1700s or something, or 1600s or something. Anyway, so I used to get a spade and a pick, and I would dig this lead pipe out, and it was sweaty, tiring work, and I would just grind at it, you know. It was like a never-ending job. I would just grind at this, digging these trenches, you know, never-ending trenches. And I would pull out the lead pipe that was really quite heavy, and I would save it, you know. And then when we went to get our supermarket shopping in the city, which is, well, not city, I think it was city, Elgin, it was about 30 miles away or plus, would take that lead and I would sell it at a scrap merchant. And I was always loving the idea of having enough lead to take for a scrap, you know, save it up over a long time and then take it down, you know. And I used to get some pocket money from that, and then I used to collect worms for fishing while I was doing it as well. And it was great exercise and quiet time by myself doing that. I remember like being baking hot in the summer doing it, but it was good. And then I used to do pheasant and grouse beating on all of the shooting estates across the Highlands there, so like, I don't even know, probably like 7 or 8 or 9 different shooting estates, and I would make connections with people, or I'd look up adverts in the local paper and that. And then when I went to that one, I'd speak to somebody about another grouse beat or pheasant beat, and then I would basically go down and do that on a Saturday and a Sunday, in the seasons of it. And I was like, you know, like the whole process and the whole learning about all of that is a big thing. And at one point I would go and stay overnight at my mate's house, who ended up being a gamekeeper, and do grouse beating up on the Queen's estate and stuff. But yeah, the other jobs I had was cleaning dishes. And at one point, when I was about I don't know, probably 16 or something. Must have been 16 or 17. I was cleaning dishes in the evening at the weekends, but I was also doing 5 days a week, or even more, residential grouse beating, I think it was, in a local shooting estate. So I'd be on the hill all day, come back, then I'd walk about 4 miles to my job, then I'd work, and I'd come back and I'd sleep. I think I was 17 at the time, and then I'd just rinse and repeat for like 2 weeks or something. It was ridiculous, really. And you come to think of it, but you know, it was nice for me to do that, to be honest, for various reasons. Yeah, and then what else did I do? I ran my own. I had my own gardening business when I was about 16, 17 as well. And basically, I'd have a little invoice book that I had bought from the post office, and my mum would clean the different holiday homes, and I would go around and I would look after the gardens for these holiday homes, and then invoice the owners, for all of that. And it used to be all sorts of things, from looking after veg polytunnels and stuff like that, to flower beds, to cutting grass, to painting fences, to fixing roads. I used to tear up and down in this little tractor with a trailer and fix somebody's really long road to the holiday home, Yeah, and then what else did I do? I've done at that time. Well, I got involved in a business enterprise scheme in school where we sold sweets in coffee jars that we painted, and recipe books, and that was a story in itself, because we ended up having a little mini coup of the leadership, because we weren't happy with it and took over the whole thing, but it was a success anyway. That was probably when I was 16, 17 again. And what else did I do? Doing this. Yeah, then when I went to uni, I got a job in a hotel, making beds and cleaning hotel rooms. I got a job in a nightclub. It was absolutely something else, that nightclub, it was called Enigma, I think it was called, yeah. And it was something else, that place, something else. People really wouldn't get it now, I don't think, because it's like something of its era when it was like 2001 or something, and it was like a kind of dance, more like a dance nightclub than anything, and drum and bass and other stuff, and it's quite big, 2 levels, and I was just a glass collector, and I had to deal with all sorts. It was like, the most manky toilets with bottles and people putting pint glasses in them, and going to the toilet in there and then blocking toilets and all sorts. But then also, I remember once they called me in to the disabled toilet, the security, and they said, clean that up, and I was like, and it was blood all over the room, splatters of blood everywhere, and all over the floor and stuff, and I was like, what's going on here? And I didn't really know. I was just like cracked on, and I thought, okay, I'll just do that, even though it was like, what is this? There's not really any insight into what was going on, really, but over time I realised that that's where people, had fights, so were dealt with as such, sometimes. And the most ridiculous thing about that place was there was like, as I was cleaning up at the end of the night, there was just pills all over the floor, like drugs, every kind of drug you can think of in pill form was just like littered across the floor. There's that many drugs being taken in that place that it was like people were just like dropping them all over the floor, Yeah. And we had some interesting after hours drinks and stuff there, but yeah, I'd come out of there at like 8, 9 in the morning, but I'd finish my shift at 3:34, but I'd stay there for 34 hours afterwards. And then what else did I do? Did security in the Students' Union, and I'll tell you some stories about that as well, but I'll have to think about that. And then I did all sorts really. I worked every kind of nightclub pretty much there is in Dundee, all different pubs as security, and as a barman, making cocktails and coffees, but mostly as security. Other stories are coming up to mind that I can't really share, or might share at some point. But yeah, I worked in a weighbridge down at the docks at one point, where I was weighing lorries into the docks and testing seeds. Meeting all the lorry drivers, bringing in barley and stuff to the boats. I worked in a butcher's, which I've mentioned before. I was a butcher. I worked in a battery factory before, making batteries for like milk floats. That was an epic day, trying to get across to that, travelling. And another thing came to mind there, but I worked in a call centre once for a short period of time, and I went for an interview once for a call centre job, and I really needed it really, but I couldn't believe it, I went in there and there's 3 people sat there with deadpan faces, and they said, "Hello, what's your name?" and all this, yeah, and then they just went, after not long, they just said, "Right, we now want you to walk around as if you're a chicken." And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Walk around as if you're a chicken." And I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Are you serious?" And they were like, "Yes." And I was like, well, I needed the job as well, but I said to them, "You might as well call me a taxi, because I'm not going to be prancing around the place here like a chicken, And they were like, "Well, okay, that's fine." And I was like, I was really annoyed actually, because I thought, come on, like, this is out of order, And I looked at it later, I think, and basically they were saying that it was a way for them to sift out people, because, and I get it to a certain extent, they were saying, that the people that would prance around like a chicken could tolerate all of the rejection and the hostile nature of things on the telephone calls, which has some validity to it, but I also thought it was kind of quite dehumanizing and kind of demeaning to ask people to do that, and I wasn't in a place where I felt able to do that at that time, because I think probably feeling quite fragile as it was, you know. But so we did that. Well, I didn't do that, but you know. What else? Did, you know, at times I've done car boots and sold things on car boots as well. What else? There's other things I did. I'm sure they'll come to mind later and stuff like that. I worked in a clothes shop as a stores person, sorting out all the stock and all of that. Yeah, what else? These midges are biting me this morning. Yeah, like marketing, you know, for nightclubs and stuff like that, handing out things, putting up posters and stuff like that. Yeah. Mainly I was doing security and stuff like that, in all sorts of different places and stuff. I worked in a private care home. Not care home, but a private hospital group that looked after people with a vast array of difficulties, with complex mental health needs and learning disabilities and all sorts. And it was a really terrible experience. I think I've mentioned it before, maybe, I don't know. But there was this aspect where I was really passionate about wanting to help people as a support worker or healthcare assistant. And I went to that job and it was horrendous, people being abused, you know, by their staff. And the whole culture being abusing patients, and it was just really wrong and bad. And there's this ridiculous thing of, like, they would have staff sat in the office chatting to each other, and they would make one staff member sit in a room with about, I mean, it could be wrong here, but it felt like it was about, when I'm thinking on it, about 15 to 20 patients, something like that. Or, yeah, in a room, like, with just basically a TV. And I think one of the key factors of that, which sticks with me, was I think there was something like 12 chairs or something, 10 or 12 chairs in that room. And it was terrible, you know. The presentations of those people were so varied that you'd have one person able to sit and read a newspaper, and you'd have another person that was getting naked and eating their own feces in this same room, you know. And I guess it was this, like, the sense I get of it is that the word that comes to mind is, like, overwhelm, and also dehumanizing, as in, like, you know, dignity not being there, and people normalizing, well, not normalizing, yeah, normalizing, not giving everybody enough attention that they need, and being able to manage that. I mean, it's simple math, isn't it? If there's not enough chairs for everybody, people can't all sit down, and people needed more input than they were getting, and also then there was a whole plethora of other abuse type stuff happening all the time. So I reported it all to the police and to the social work department, but then I proceeded to not get very far, and instead I was, like, you know, taken through the racks of interviews with police and all sorts, as if, you know, I wasn't telling the truth or something. But then actually it came to pass 2 years down the line that there was a big expose on Panorama with that company at another hospital, and I felt like all vindicated to myself. But there was a huge impact on my life from quitting that job, because I became depressed and ended up just sessioning computer games for a long time, because I didn't really know what to do with myself after that, and I was all a bit like impacted quite significantly from it. And someone else that I worked with ended up being severely depressed as well after they left, because they were quite wanting to do a good job as well. Anyway, so I did that. Thankfully that company's now liquidated, but yeah, basically doing, what else did I do? Did driving as well, so I used to drive the night bus to transport people home. They were drunk and stuff like that to different accommodations. Sure, I did different things as well than that, I can't remember now. Yeah. And then, oh yeah, and then at one point I worked as a life model, of all things. So I did life modelling, and my partner at the time, she was a life model, and so I was able to get a job quite readily. I knew about it at least, and that was a whole experience in itself that I could talk about, but it was a very helpful thing in some ways with regards to anxiety and flooding myself with anxiety and doing exposure work on myself around body image and my own self-confidence and stuff like that. Yeah, so I did that for a university, like classes of like 25 students and classes of them and all of that, you know. And then some people did drawings of me, and it was quite funny that, to me anyway, that they would often draw me with a smile on my face. Which I found quite interesting, you know. But it is harder than it looks sometimes, because you do get dead legs and dead arms and stuff like that, and you've got to try and stay still for as long as possible, you know. Even when you're lying down or whatever else, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, what else did I do? Basically, yeah. Then, you know, I've worked in prisons, I've worked in private practice, I've worked for online therapy providers, I've done every department in the prisons pretty much, substance misuse, everything, managed teams there, psychological therapy services, different ones for complex depression, anxiety, as a psychological therapist, integrated, and also mental health nurse. All the placements I did were quite interesting in my training as well, very varied different things. I guess it comes to mind that I particularly in some ways enjoyed working with old people. It kind of felt like you were making a difference, and yeah, that was where I chose to do my most hours was working with old people, in fact. Yeah, and then I've had my own company three times or something, doing kind of like contracting, trying to set up a training company, doing private therapy work, yeah. Can't think what else really. You know, been student representatives for nursing years as well, where I've organised big nights out and all sorts, you know, like representing like 80 to 100 nurses kind of style, you know, organising stuff for them. I I've also then been a trustee, haven't I, for that charity, so I guess I've been a trustee as well. And now I'm kind of part of the senior management team where I am, and one of the senior therapists as such, kind of style, as in one of the ones with the most experience of doing this complex treatment. And the amazing thing is, we have very cool outcomes with a lot of people that might have been to therapy before a number of times with other services or other places, but not got better, or still unwell, or still got quite significant difficulties. So we end up doing the work with them and get very cool outcomes for them that they want to, that they're with their mental health difficulties, and working on their goals. So that's cool. I also now work across the whole of London doing engagement work as well, editing websites, social media management, everything, comms manager. But yeah, I'm sure other things will come to mind that I used to do as well, but in some ways it's enough. But there's this aspect where, things progress over time, and the more qualified we get, sometimes the easier it is. The more we learn, the more value we add, the better. The more value we add, the better in some ways, isn't it? Whatever we're doing. But yeah, I guess, you could say I've worked for free, doing the trustee stuff. I just do it for free, I did it for free, sorry. I guess I was just thinking that, now, I do volunteering for the athletics club very occasionally for events, and I would still do bits for the Gurkha Centre. If they need me, they can give me a shout, and that's all unpaid things, and then I also do the magazine and leaflet delivery thing with my sons, which is very, very low pay, but there's value that comes from all of these things, alongside having a senior position. And I guess I also just was thinking, I also did CQC work, so I was inspecting healthcare providers for a number of years. We'd go in and inspect all the different hospitals and all the different private companies providing substance services and substance misuse services, and forensic hospitals, prisons and all sorts, which was a really interesting and enriching thing to do. But I guess I was thinking, despite what you're getting paid and stuff for things, you can often learn things from it all anyway. And I would say everything I've done experience-wise has enriched my knowledge about people, about life and perspectives. And there's been a value to be taken from everything, really. And you learn more from the more you do in some ways. The more you do, the more you learn. And it enriches our lives, But have a good one, and good luck with whatever you're doing.